My name is Dawn Tsai. I graduated from St. Joe's in 2015. I'm currently working as graphics and multimedia editor at the New York Times. In my current role, I mostly report, design, and develop visual stories. There's a wide range of projects that we work on, from quick and fast breaking news coverage, usually include like a map to locate the incident, to a very longer term enterprise visual stories. I play different roles in different projects. Sometimes more of a reporter researcher, sometimes it's more a visual focused role. That means identifying graphics targets for a story and produce those graphics. And sometimes I'm in a role to string everything together to produce a visual story, like the 3D special investigation we worked on the Bronx fire. My role was built upon my colleagues' reporting and great 3D modeling, and to overlay 2D graphics on top of the 3D model movement to create like a cohesive, comprehensive visual experience. And sometimes I play multiple roles in one project. I would, for example, the Tucker Carlson investigation, I was part of the team that spent months going through his transcript. So more like a researcher's role to identifying patterns in his show. But I'm also the part of the team that produced the story, that constructed narrative and made and designed the graphics and visual presentations for the end. So my role is very fluid and it's very fun because I get to work with different people on different content, and I also get to play with a lot of toys. Their text, code, namely HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and also mapping software, Adobe Illustrator, and sometimes video editing softwares. So yeah, and playing is very much encouraged in our role. I think my path is typical and atypical at the same time. I did not study journalism and I did not aspire to be a journalist when I was in college, but I came to where I am mostly through the Hawk, working at the student newspaper, and found I really enjoy being in a collegiate environment and work on stories and storytelling. But my classes and everything I did in college kind of all contributed to where I am. A lot of my colleagues did come from the similar college newspaper experience background, but more typically people would study journalism, went to journalism school, sometimes more text heavy journalism background, and then transition into this more visual role. But we have varied background in my department. Some people study geography, some people study political science or computer science, and as well as some people came from a very fine art school background. So there are many different paths that lead to a person that work in a graphics department in a newsroom. I think there are a few. The first one, and most importantly, I think, is teamwork. All the work we do are collaborative. So visual journalism is kind of different from traditional journalism. Single byline is very rare in our work because we have to work with a big team with different skill set to create really ambitious visual journalism pieces. So I think teamwork is definitely something I learned at St. Joe's, whether it's through team group projects in classes or working at the Hawk. I'm constantly working with other people so I think that was a important skill. And then there's some technical skills. I took web design and visual rhetoric classes at St. Joe's that served as foundation for further developing my current design and web development skills that's needed for the job. And then curiosity. And I feel I was encouraged to explore both academically and professionally when I was at St. Joe's. I remember when I meet with my advisor, Dr. Amay Nai, she will always ask me, what do you want to do? Like, instead of telling me what she thinks is good for me. At the time, I felt like frustrated. I was like, why can't you just tell me what's the best? But now I really appreciate her approach, that just be open to possibilities. And I think that was really empowering and helped me to forge my own path. And I took a lot of classes that didn't have anything to do with what I'm doing right now, but I took classes that seem to have nothing to do with what I'm doing right now, including some philosophy classes, theology classes, but they're all really valuable experience that opened my eyes to different disciplines. And as a journalist, we have to be curious and ask a lot of questions. And I think that was something that kind of planted in me when I was at St. Joe's. And lastly, I would say it's hard work really lays the foundation for being successful. And I think I learned that hard work really pays off when I was at St. Joe's, both inside and outside of classes. And I remember one example is like specific at the Hawk. Sophomore year is when I first heard of this award called the Pacemaker, and it's deemed as the Pulitzer Prize for college news and college newspaper. And at the time, I think we have never won it before. We just like think, oh, it would be great if one day we could win a Pacemaker, but through like really hard teamwork and the long nights, every Monday after every Monday. In my senior year, we actually won one. So that was really something that encouraged me and was a powerful experience that told me that hard work does pay off. A lot of what I do is about just doing it. So when you apply to jobs, people will look at your portfolio, probably look at that more than your grades and past experiences. So the act of doing it is important. As I talked a lot about already, the Hawk was a big part of me. So I definitely recommend like joining an activity like that to start your practice. But also you can start your pet project, like visualize some data in a subject that you're interested in. Could be movies, music, or could even be your self-generated data about your life. So just start making things to put things on the paper or on the screen that just get your feet wet to make something that you can show for yourself. And then getting an internship, as cliche as it sounds, usually is helpful because it gives you experience of producing work in the real world, and you can see whether or not you actually enjoy spending hours of your day doing this work. And I learned a lot of my design sensibility through internship. So I didn't even know what grid system was when I first started interning at the Post. So learning in a work environment really helps expedite the learning process. And when I was at St. Joe's, I also played around with a lot of other design forms. I would say what I do now is like information design or data visualization. But when I was in school, I also played around with hand lettering, t-shirt design, like different design forms. So I think that's also when you're in school is the perfect time to just play with different forms and see like exactly which one is your favorite to go into. I would say that the online social media is is also a networking tool that, especially for journalism, a lot of other journalists on Twitter, and that's where you can easily see what other people are doing, get into conversation with others, and also maybe even messaging and get to talk with people whose work you admire. And one good thing about my particularly field that's like graphics is everyone is very open and generous, and there's much less ego comparing to a traditional text journalism newsroom. So everyone is very willing to share and talk, and that creates a very good environment. And I also want to say that just don't put too much pressure on yourself, and at the same time, just be open to meet new people. Don't go with like, I have to make X amount of connection professionally, and it's more just to meet people, like meeting your friends. And I think just forge your relationship as you're making new friends, and think that's really helpful to keep long-term connection. And One other thing I found very useful when I was at St. Joe's was I volunteered at a storytelling conference my senior year. It's called The Future of Storytelling. I think they're still ongoing. And it's a very like top tier standard industry conference. I just applied as a volunteer. I went for free and then help them direct people go to places. I think it was really beneficial to me at the time as a student. It opened my eyes to a lot of innovating work that was happening in the design storytelling industry, and mind blowing at the same time because it got to meet a lot of people who are working in the top companies. So if you have opportunities, you can identify some of those conferences in your industry that you think is interesting to attend and try to go as a volunteer, and you get to meet people and also exposed to the best of work. At least in my experience so far, it's pretty inclusive. And I know a lot of employers, the Times included, have been making big strides to make the workplace more diverse. So there's been more gender and racial balance in just recent times. And I hope things would get better in general for everyone. But as the field is getting bigger, I'm sure there will also be more competition. And one barrier I sometimes caught myself in was programming skills, like coding skills. And it doesn't mean that I can't figure it out or can't get help from others, but sometimes it does limit the possibility of things that I can achieve on my own. So yeah, so I think that was like technical skill was sometimes I found one barrier of entry. I don't have a particular book or website to mention, but I think looking at others' work is very important. I looked at many New York Times graphics projects when I was a student, and we actually even studied the classic one called Snowfall in one of my communication classes. And I was amazed and inspired at the time and thought, oh, that's exactly what I want to be a part of. So I think for someone who's just starting out, aiming high is really important. Look online to see whose work is something you want to be a part of, and try to start making work that kind of look like them or be inspired by them, and even get in touch with them to see if you could work with them. And for me, the Times has always been a source of inspiration, and especially their sophisticated aesthetic. So I think for someone who's just starting out, aiming high is really important. So look online to see what companies, what agencies, what newsrooms are making the kind of work that you want to be a part of, and try to learn from them, make work that look like theirs, and maybe even get in touch and try to get internship or some kind of work with them. And that's the best way to get started. And when I was in college, in addition to the Times, I was also looking up to a small Italian graphic design studio called The Tiger. So I started to try to make work that kind of looked like theirs and use their work as my inspiration, and like my bar, like I want to make work that kind of like that. So how do I do that? And so I think that was very helpful to me, that their work as my reference. And I also recommend not just looking at one discipline, even though I'm making interactive graphics and data visualizations. I also look at work from other design disciplines like traditional graphic design, fine art, web design, game design, documentary films, and all these other disciplines for inspiration. I wish someone told me to take some computer science classes, because that would be very beneficial to as a foundation for the technical part of what I'm doing, and also some history classes so I understand the world better.